Well, Nate, we did it. We got to episode 100. And almost almost 2 years to the day that the first episode of this podcast dropped. We are now dropping episode 100. And to kind of commemorate this, I guess at least for ourselves, we really thought long and hard about what we would do this episode about. We didn't want to treat this as a normal episode. And so today, what Nate and I want to do for everyone listening, everyone watching on YouTube, we are considering the lessons learned over the last 2 years. We came into this experience very open-minded, with open hands. We'll do this, if we run out of topics in 20 episodes, then maybe we just call it. And what ended up happening over the last 2 years was that Nate and I really began to get a different picture of this industry. This podcast has grown, its listener base has grown tremendously since we started. It has brought a different kind of school owner into our environment, and we've ended up making connections and talking to a lot of people that we didn't know before. Owners of schools that are doing $1 million a year or approaching $1 million a year. It has been phenomenal. And my view of our industry, of the music education industry, is very different than it was 2 years ago. And I want to talk about, and Nate wants to talk about today, some of those lessons we've learned along the way. Nate, thoughts on this?
Well, I like the way you framed it when you were teeing up the idea, which you were like, Nate, what are lessons that we actually learned? And when I say actually learned, I always think about it in terms of like experiential knowledge. Like they weren't just in my head as an intellectual idea, or it's not like I'm hypothesizing that this could be true. I'm saying we met so many amazing people. We heard so many great questions from our listeners. And over time, as we engaged with them, these sort of lessons like moved into my heart. And I was like, oh, wait, these are like some universal truths. Like I need to really contemplate why we're seeing some of these successes and challenges over and over and over from so many people in our communities.
So welcome back to the 7-Figure Music School, everyone. I'm Daniel. This is Nate. We're here to show you how to run a fun, mission-driven business. We've been doing that for the past 2 years, and we're going to be doing it going into 2024. Now, before we actually jump into the lessons learned and kind of go through our list that we really spent a lot of time thinking about, want to make everyone aware of an opportunity that's coming up on December 7th. So for the past 2 years, around New Year's time, for 2 years running, we released episodes on annual planning. We talked about the importance of it. We talked about how to do it. We gave some good education on that. It's one of those necessary evils that we have in our business that people know they need to be doing, but they don't do it. Like we're supposed to eat healthy, but we kind of don't. And this year, instead of doing yet another episode on annual planning, we decided to go a step further. And we are going to be hosting a special workshop on December 7th. And at this workshop, we're actually going to teach our annual planning process, give you our templates for annual planning, and actually walk you through and help you get started on annual planning for the coming year. So that this isn't just something that you kind of feel vaguely guilty about as you go into 2024. We actually want to help you do it. Right. That's how important we think it is. Yeah. And this, by the way, this workshop is absolutely free. So we are not charging for this. We very well could. We really just want to help folks. So as like our gift to you, weird that we're giving the gift after 100 episodes, but as our gift to you, we want to help you have the best year that you can in 2024. So there will be information either in the email you got, or if you're seeing this on social media or on the Grow blog, there'll be links on how to register. Register early. We only have so many spots before we can't take any more in our conference platform. So if you want to do this, make sure to sign up early. There will be training, and then there'll be some practical exercises. That's all I can say right now. But, again, if you're subscribed to the email list for 7FMS, you will definitely get the invites for this. And if you want to do that, go to growyourmusicstudio.com/7FMS. Just sign up there, join our email list, and you'll definitely get invites. to register for free. So having said that, I want to jump into the lessons learned. Nate, should I start us off?
Yeah. You tee us up with number one.
Okay.
Lessons you actually learned, Daniel. What do you got?
Yes. So this one, I'm going to start with a short and easy one. There is a market now in our industry for selling your school. A market that did not exist 5 years ago. Our industry has developed quite a bit in the last 5 to 7 years. The sophistication, the opportunities available, the resources available to studio owners and multi-teacher school owners there's just been an explosion in resources available, community, trainings, services. But I think one of the ones that really took me by surprise, really came to my attention with Jeff Homer, who's been on the podcast multiple times, and his ensemble music school company that is buying up schools all over the United States. Their goal is to get to 200 studios by 2030. And I think they're actually going to surpass that goal, to be quite honest, given the rate at which they're buying schools. But I personally know school owners who've sold their school to Jeff and had sort of an exit strategy. Because this opportunity exists now, I think it's changing how a lot of school owners, at least the ones I've interacted with, how they're thinking about their school and the seriousness with which they are now thinking about the business side of things. So that has been a real eye-opening thing for me. And now I've even seen other groups of business people who are also not copying that model, but doing something similar. We had another guy on who's buying up schools in the western half of the United States, Brady Davis, and their company isn't as big yet, but I think we're going to see more and more of this over the next decade. And I think that people, as opposed to thinking of their business as a money-making venture or just a cash-generating venture, I think more and more school owners will begin to see that as a possible retirement exit plan, or take the business more seriously, or take the lessons that they've learned by looking at a company like Ensemble and then running their school in a different way, so they could perhaps even passively hold the company and let someone else run it. So I think that's been a huge eye-opener for me, and it's made me think very, very differently even about how I do coaching and consulting. Nate, thoughts, or maybe a different lesson learned?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to link one of my lessons I've actually learned over the first 99 EPs together, but you just highlighted it perfectly. Quote, running their school differently. What I think that's a really important comment to double down on, is that what we've seen, given that now there's this opportunity that we really didn't see, like I definitely didn't think along these lines 14 years ago when we started Brooklyn Music Factory, that, hey, you know what? One of my exits could be to really systemize my business, get very fluent in the financial side of it, understand its worth, and then say at year 20, exit by selling and then having capital to do something else with all my newfound knowledge. And that's the piece that I want to highlight there. When you said running their school differently, what we've noticed over the last 2 years is that there are more and more school owners that are actually interested in leveling up their business acumen and saying, hey, not only do I love music and do I love music education, but I really actually am beginning to fall in love with the craft of business. And in order to be able to sell your business, or to even consider that as a possible exit, you're absolutely going to have to fall in love with the craft of business and get to a certain level of predictability within your school and your multi-teacher school for someone to be interested in buying it. Which brings me to one of my lessons that I've actually learned. Daniel, all of our listeners know that I love numbers. I love the side of the business that is around forecasting and working on the financials and then doing a lot of analytical work. One of the lessons that I've actually learned is that not everybody's like that. In fact, I would say for all of our listeners and the clients we've worked with and the different schools that we've coached over the last few years, actually certainly less than half of them are truly interested in the financial fluency piece. The lesson I learned, dude, is that it's not that exciting to a lot of people, which means that you and I need to do a much better job of helping them understand that it's not that complicated. It won't take up your entire life. And most importantly, it's essential to get right at some point. That's what I got from my lesson learned on that tip.
And I think your second lesson learned there kind of leads right into number 3 for me. When you think about the fact that there are far more options for building a truly remarkable studio business, and then that there are now more resources available to help us in areas of the business that we didn't learn in music school, that kind of leads me to my third lesson learned. And I will say that I suspected this prior to us starting this project, but now I've definitely confirmed it. Like, intuitively, this makes sense, but I've seen it confirmed over and over and over again. And it's so short, simple, to the point. I'm not even going to belabor the point on this one. And it's simply this. The school owners that I see that are having the most success are the ones that have invested heavily either into A, their business education, or B, invested heavily into their school itself, or C, and most likely, they've invested heavily into both. So examples of this, a couple, 10 episodes back, we had Caitlin Davidson on. I've known Caitlin since 2016. She was actually the first coaching client of Grow Your Music Studio way back in 2016. She ended up working with us a number of times over the years. She also, I know her personally, we kind of have more of a business friendship now. We're on a texting and messenger basis, and we'll just randomly check in with each other, even though she hasn't been a client for a while. But I know that not only has she invested with us, but has invested in a number of trainings and courses from other business owners. She has spent so much time like traveling to conferences, reading books. I also think of folks like, again, another guest we had on recently, Vera, put a ton of money into and I don't use this word lightly, a world-class recital hall. Something very unusual. Yeah. I mean, a 1 in 10,000 music school, a 1 in 100,000 music school. I mean, who does that? And to hear her talk about the challenges she had in getting that built and the effort they put into getting it built, the levels to which she had to personally sacrifice to create the program she wanted, that kind of investment led to an outsized return. And when I think about this, I think the opposite of it is to have like a very small view, have a very fearful view of investment, where you're kind of viewing the school as just a vehicle to fuel a lifestyle or to provide a job for yourself. There is nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But there's sometimes, I see this often, there's a mismatch between the goals that someone has and the way that they're running the school. See? Yep. So it's fine to run a cash flow business. And frankly, the last 5 years that my studio was still open, because I was building this business, my vision for what I wanted to do actually diminished. And I really did see it as, this is just a way to take a skill that I have and a love that I have for instructing kids in the piano and make good money doing it. Meanwhile, I'm building this other thing over here. That's where my passion really lies. Like my long-term vision, my long-term future. And so in that case, then great. My vision matched my actions. But for someone who says, oh yeah, I want to get to 300 students, I want to get to 500 students, and yet they won't dig deep, find a way to invest in SEO or find a way to invest in, working with a coach. And I'm not just talking about us, any coach that can help you with financial fluency or help you with your marketing challenges or help you with team problems. Like, there's just a mismatch between what you say you want and what you're actually doing. And so, again, I think the lesson learned here, to kind of wrap it up, is just this idea that I see the most successful owners that I've either interacted with, interviewed, coached, they have put themselves in really uncomfortable positions over and over again. to build
Yeah.
something that is really unique, either for their city or in the cases of some of the guests that I already know we're going to have on in 2024, something that actually even has an international audience because they're doing like an online version of a studio. And I will just say
Yep.
this. I'm just going to say I've been extremely happy with the guests we've had on this show. The last 15 to 20 episodes, we've had some really, truly incredible guests. I can't even tell you how excited I am for what we have in store for you coming up in 2024. We're only playing the first half of the year right now, but some of the guests we're having on, I'm just true. I cannot wait to tell you all. So stay
Dude,
tuned. This episode is sponsored by grouplessons.com. If you're looking for a group piano method that is easy to implement in your studio or school, look no farther than Piano Express from grouplessons.com. Because unlike most group piano methods, Piano Express allows students to make individual progress within the context of a larger group. And because of the at-home practice tools and gamified curriculum, students using the Piano Express method make faster progress than the average method book student. And that helps students feel excited, accomplished, and motivated to learn new music. Also, the system is really adaptable. We've got teachers using the system in their home studios, and we have many large commercial studios running our 3-room model that allows you to see up to 24 students per hour with just 2 teachers. So if you'd like to learn more about Piano Express, navigate to grouplessons.com and sign up for a free demo. You'll get to look at the method, our app and teacher guides, and we'll even give you a sneak peek of our implementation plan that has helped hundreds of studios start their group program in just a few weeks.
I'm psyched for the guests. That's always a good sign because I can't wait to learn from them. So there were a bunch of lessons that came out of this that I learned, and I sort of put them all under one category, which is this. If something, I wrote, when something matters enough to do it, then do it fully or wholly, and do it to the absolute best of your ability. So going super deep on each system and trying to get it operational and correct is much more important than having a bunch of half-baked, broken ideas or systems that you test once or twice and never really refine and get to be done month after month or year after year at your company or music school. So perfect example, pitching this December 7th annual planning. If you've never really done annual planning, or maybe you listened to our ep a year or two ago and like sort of tried it in a journal for an hour, but you're like, I know it's important. Well, then show up December 7th and create your first draft of a system that you're actually doing. And then know that a year later, you'll get draft 2 at it. And a year after that, you'll get draft 3. But really, really do it. And if you're not really, really going to commit to it, and by the way, I know you're sort of like, dude, this sounds abstract to me. I push back on that. You know when you're 100% committed. You know it. You know, for example, when there's a teacher of yours who's really struggling and you decide whether or not you're going to go help her and do one-on-one check-ins with her until she moves from struggling to mostly succeeding, you know if you're actually going to show up for the next 4 weeks to support her, or whether or not you're just paying it lip service. So that's the major lesson, which is like, it just doesn't matter to do something 20%. Just put it on your someday maybe list and don't bother. Stick with the handful of, back to what you were saying, dude, stick with the handful of areas in your business that you truly want to develop. And just dig deep there. It's like my buddy said, at the Dharma Center where I go, and he's like, Nate, don't dig a bunch of shallow holes. Just do deep reading on the subject and try to create an experiential understanding through practice of that one teaching, right? So just to highlight, well, actually, Daniel, let me ping it back if you got anything that popped up, because I see you over there nodding your head, and I actually had 3 sub bullets, but maybe it's too much information. What do you got? What's top of mind for you?
Well, once again, it kind of naturally leads into my next 2 lessons learned, to be honest. And I think,
okay, lay them on us.
Yeah, these are the only other 2 that I had, and they're so closely connected, I almost don't want to split them. And like the second one, it's something that I suspected this was true, but in starting this podcast, in starting to meet a bunch of people that I had not met before, because really prior to 2020, Grow was a lot more focused on single teacher studios. And after the pandemic, especially as we started this podcast, we've just worked with a lot more bigger schools. Not that we don't love single teacher studios. We love you. But we've broadened,
Right.
I think, the experience that we have. And again, I suspected this was true, but now I've confirmed it. I've come up with a list of kind of the 9 big problem areas that schools have. I think prior in working with people and having a conversation here or there, they talk about the blind man and the elephant, where, you got a blind, and this guy's feeling the trunk, and this guy's feeling the tail, and this guy's feeling the side. And it's like they each have a description of what the elephant is because of their limited perspective. I think I felt like this prior to the last 2 years. But again, in meeting all these school owners and doing the podcast and talking to these guests, I've come up with a short list of let's call them areas that school owners most commonly struggle. These are the problem areas. Okay? I'm just going to read them off here real fast. I don't have a lot of editorial. Time management, student retention, low profit margins. This is a big one. Difficulty in finding teachers, or a perceived difficulty in finding teachers. Keeping educational quality high as the business scales up. Another struggle, they call it struggling getting leads, but what I call it is their struggle is actually an underinvestment in marketing. That's the real struggle. Another big one, lack of vision or lack of a plan to execute that vision. 8, probably a little bit more hidden, but came out over time, unaddressed personal issues. So issues in the personal life that are actually sapping all their strength and energy and focus out of the business and into things going on outside of the business. Yep. But then there's problems in the business because of those things, but they don't necessarily see that they're connected. Or they know that, there's a lot of stress in this area of my life over here, maybe caring for an aging parent or a home issue or just something like that. And they realize they're stressed there, but they don't see all the ways that it's impacting the business. And then the last one, number 9, reactivity versus proactivity. Okay, so those are the areas of struggle I see. The other lesson learned, and this goes back to what you were just saying, Nate, and I don't think I'm going to say it quite the way you did. I was paying attention, but you said it in a certain way. I think what I'm about to say is very similar to it. It's just my way of phrasing it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
It's that, and this is really kind of not a more recent revelation, but it's just been dawning on me, especially this year, is that I think owners have to have an emergent breakthrough. And what I mean is there's this idea of an emergent property. It's not linear, but rather there's a number of things that have to go correctly at once for something to work correctly. I do think that there can be low-hanging fruit identified, and you and I have a process to identify that low-hanging fruit with people that we've worked with, where we've really gotten to the heart of the matter quite quickly, and say, this is the biggest area of struggle. And now let's actually go to work on that thing. But what's interesting is that we might go to work on that thing, but there's only a little bit of felt change. So then we move to the second thing on the list. And maybe the number one thing was retention and the second thing was marketing. So then we go to marketing and we make some changes there. Then, and work deep on that, focus on that for a while. Then we go to the third thing, focus on that. And then boom, all of a sudden, explosive, massive growth. That's a sign of of an emergent breakthrough, is that enough things have to be going right for the whole thing to get off the ground. Otherwise, you just don't, to maybe switch
Yes.
analogies, you don't have enough of a boost to get out of the atmosphere, to get off the launch pad. Let me actually demonstrate what I'm talking about.
This episode is sponsored by BigMusicGames.com. As our listeners know, Brooklyn Music Factory is all about a fun, fluency-first approach to music lessons. And at the foundation of our teaching methods are rhythm, melody, harmony, and songwriting games that challenge students as young as 4 years old to train their ears and flex that musical mind. Because when you set an intention of gamifying every single lesson, you're going to find improved attendance, increased play at home, and higher student retention. So we've set up a website just for our listeners so you can start playing today. Go to bigmusicgames.com/7FMS and create your free account. Again, that's bigmusicgames.com/7FMS. And if you join today, I'm going to send you a personal invite to join our weekly teacher training call with me and Greggy Bizzle, our chief game designer. Go ahead and put play back into practice with Big Music Games.
So I'll have someone come to me and say, yeah, we've got 150 students, and I'm taking home like $2,500 a month after I pay all expenses, after I pay the teachers, after I pay more, the rent or the mortgage on the studio location. Okay, so what's the goal then? Well, I really want to be at X number of dollars per month. I want to make a wage that makes sense. I don't want us to have to even necessarily be a 2-income household. Like that's the goal. Okay, well, why can't you get to that? Okay, well, we get about 5 to 10 leads a month. Okay. And, we have 150 students, but I don't feel our retention's good. Well, what is your retention? How many students are you losing per month? Well, we haven't been the best about tracking that. I think we did a couple years ago, but then I lost this admin and she'd been the one tracking it. And I don't know how to log into this software over here. And I don't know how to find this. And actually we switched from this studio management platform to this studio management platform. And the old one tracked it this way. And the new one actually doesn't really track it. So I'm not even sure actually how to do it. Okay, so homework assignment, I need you to go find those retention numbers. I just want you to, here's my marketing metrics worksheet that I give every single client. Here's how you're going to track this from now on. Because actually, the way you were tracking it actually doesn't even make sense, the way you were doing it before. Are there any other problems? Oh, yeah, well, we're having real trouble keeping teachers. And so, Nate, do you hear what's happening here? It's like spaghetti. It's all wrapped up in each other. This is what I'm talking about. And so, and then I'm like, okay, I need you to do this, 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 and this. So they come back 2 weeks later. I asked them how much they got done out of, these homework assignments I give them. Oh, I feel really guilty because I only got to the first one. I know I was supposed to do these 3 things. I only got the first. Well, why is that? Well, and then they 20 minutes later, they've told me everything going on in their personal life and how they don't have time to do this, this, and this. Okay, so actually, then let's actually see even how you're using your personal time. How much do you think you're working each week? I've got to be working 50, 60 hours. Okay, let's actually just determine that. So I give them this other tool that I give my clients. And we actually track their time. Yeah. So, and I'll just give an example. 2 different clients this year so grossly overestimated how much they were actually working on the business that one of them was actually even embarrassed to show me the sheet because they'd worked so little on the business during the previous, week or 2 that I asked them to track this. And so it's there's just these issues, all across, and they're all feeding into each other. And so there has to be kind of this entrepreneurial reset where it's okay, we got to get some basic habits in place. We need to actually figure out what's true about your finances, true about what your leads actually are, true what your actual problems are around leads, or if there is one, what your actual problems are around retention. And undergirding all this is actually addressing personal habits, time management habits, productivity habits. And a lot of times what ends up happening is, and I don't use this, I know you alluded to this earlier, Nate, but it's almost like people have to become business athletes. Athletes have to live a certain way to be competitive. If you're going to run a competitive business, if you're going to run a business that's going to pay you good money, and I've been running one of those for a long, long time now. There are some things that have to be in place. I don't think they're intuitive. And it's it's the rare cat that actually kind of bootstraps their way to this. Some of these people I was telling you about, or folks that we've had on the podcast to interview, these folks, there's something different going on up there. Most people aren't like that, but it is very possible for the average person, and I'm a good example of this, Nate, I think you're a good example of this, to put some things in place where maybe they weren't gifted in that area, and actually over time, as they continue to work at that skill, actually get to a point where it's like what emerges from that is something really, really incredible. I was not naturally like a very gifted public speaker. Some might make the argument that I'm still not. But if you go back and look at videos that Grow put out in 2016, it's actually painful to watch those early videos of mine. I was so wooden, could not think on my feet, had to like read off an outline, right? I did not have a business education. I didn't naturally I wasn't a toddler who had a to-do list. I had to learn all these things,
Yeah. Yes.
And I think it's, Thomas Edison, I'll stop after this.
Well,
Thomas Edison called it perspiration and inspiration, but it's mostly perspiration. I think you have to work towards these things. So as we draw to a close on this episode, I think to summarize the lessons learned that we've talked about today, I think it really just comes down to a word that kept coming up over and over again between us, Nate. You said it, I said it, and I think it shot through a lot of the topics that got said here, was just the idea of investment. No one builds a great business without investment of some kind. And I think that's intuitive. I think we know that. But as we've gotten into the details here, we see and begin to feel just how deep that has to go. And there has to be this conscious plan of how to move forward. And I think just as we wrap, I'm going to say, as we wrap episode 100 here, that, we really want to help to support you in the journey. I think one of the ways we can do that, check the show notes or seek us out in social media. Come to this annual planning workshop we're doing. It's absolutely free. We can help you get set up for an amazing year. Nate and I are currently in the process, as we're recording this, of getting ready for our annual planning, because we're obviously recording this long before when the air date. But yeah, we'd love to connect with you and to help you start investing in ways that are really meaningful and that can actually make true change in the business. And just as a personal thank you for me, thank you for sticking with us for 100 episodes. We've really enjoyed doing this. It's opened my eyes. Obviously, we've learned these lessons. I hope you've learned them along with us. And thank you for listening to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. 100 episodes is amazing, Daniel. It's really a celebration. 100 of anything is amazing. So thank you, too. Thank you, Daniel, for showing up 100 times with me.
For sure. It's been fun. Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you all in the next one. We're going on a little bit of a hiatus here in December, but we will be back at the beginning of January with a slate of new episodes. We've already been doing a lot of planning. We'll already have a lot of them recorded prior to the end of 2023, ready to be aired right at the beginning of 2024. That's why we can be so confident about how good these episodes are going to be. But we look forward to hanging out with you, talking with you, answering your questions, and perhaps working with you in the new year.